And hello, Hearts of Oak. It's wonderful to have a guest back with us so quickly. Bill was with us only weeks ago, but I wanted to get his excellent thoughts and perspective and analysis on the wonderful Trump landslide or earthquake or whatever you want to call it, tsunami. Bill Walton, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be back.
So lots to discuss. And we did a show on Tuesday with different people joining us, looking at all different aspects to what has happened. Obviously, at the moment, Friday afternoon, morning your time, Friday afternoon UK time, going out on Monday. Trump obviously has won the Electoral College, won the popular vote, is 52 seats at the moment in the Senate. And we'll see what happens with Carrie Lake's run. I think Arizona are going to take a couple of weeks to count it. I'm not. What is it with Arizona not actually able to count ballots?
Well, Mariposa, that county deserves some special place in hell, in election hell, because every year, every time we have an election, the same thing happens. And France can get the votes counted for the whole country in a couple of hours. I think Italy does the same thing, and I don't know where you are in the UK, but it seems like every other major developed country can do it. Arizona evidently can't. So, and it's got to be on purpose, and it's a way to make sure you get the votes you want, as Carrie Lake will explain in great detail.
Maybe I feel like Britain could send them just like a box of calculators or something, something to go 1 + 1 + 1. Obviously, you get to the bigger numbers, more difficult. But anyway, we'll wait and see. Obviously, Carrie Lake is so close, just very, very slightly behind, and hoping and praying that she wins and adds another one. We'll see what happens in the House race, which is very, very tight. And because of course, you've got the White House, you've got the Senate, and you've got seemingly the Trump will take the House, but tight. That doesn't give him a lot of leeway. And I was kind of we all were, that there'd be a larger margin in the House, and it's going to be tight. What does that mean for actually getting legislation through? If he has 3-4 seats spare in the Senate, but the House has maybe only got a handful of seats, does that make getting legislation through quite difficult?
Well, originally conceived, the House was supposed to reflect the will of the voters every 2 years, and every House seat was supposedly up for grabs. And so if you had a massive win by a president, you typically see a 30, 40, 50, 60 feet swing in the House. What's happened over time is they've gerrymandered, both parties have gerrymandered districts so that most of them are safe districts, and they're really not in play every 2 years. And so it's come down to 30, 40, 50, 60 so-called competitive seats, and those are the races everybody focuses on, but you don't see the big swings you used to see. I don't know, when Newt came in 94, what they win, 40, 50 seats, and swept in with the what was that? Now, the predictions were the Republicans could even lose the House because of the way the seats were structured and who was up for, the people they put in. But that hasn't happened, and now looks like Mike Johnson, the current speaker, is going to stay in the job, and he doesn't need a massive majority to get things done. The biggest thing with the Senate had the Democrats had control, the first thing they would have done is start impeaching Trump. And that we've avoided, I believe. There's something like 25 seats still undecided, and something like Democrats would have to win 19 or 20 of them to get a majority, and I don't think that's going to happen. So we win, they lose. It's enough. The Senate's really the big deal. We've got a 53 seat majority, we believe, and that we've got some Lisa Murkowski types that have always slowed things down. This gives them a lot less power, and getting judges through the Senate and other appointments becomes that much easier, that's a very good thing.
What was your overall assessment as all the results came together? early on Wednesday, earlier than maybe many expected. I think many were expecting this to last quite a long time, but within hours it was declared. I saw Newsmax declaring it. What were your thoughts as you watched the votes come in? Because in politics, you never know until those votes are counted.
Well, it was just stunning. I mean, we've been disheartened in the last 4 years. I mean, Joe Biden came in day one and immediately rescinded everything that Trump has done with his stack of executive orders. And, we soon learned that Biden probably didn't even know what he was signing. And we've just had week after week, month after month of relentless, the Democrat agenda inflicted on America and hurting the economy, bringing about inflation. It's been a gloomy, gloomy 3.5 years. And so we all went into this kind of with low expectations, expecting the worst, expecting a long count into the night, expecting a lot of late minute ballot dumps. But one takeaway is the Republican National Committee and all the other activist groups and on the Republican side have done a lot better job monitoring the elections. And, there was an instance, I can't remember which district, where they said, gee, we're just going to go home and stop counting. And the Republican lawyers there were on the spot and they said, no, you're going to keep counting. There's no waiting for other things to come in to change things. And so there were in precinct after precinct, that sort of thing was happening. Of course, the other thing was that the vote total, Donald Trump won the popular vote. And that was totally unexpected and a delight. And the working phrase here was make the win too big to steal. And in fact, that's what happened. The underlying numbers, though, were even more encouraging because in every single, the Democrats have divided us up into identity groups. I don't know. We've got incredibly proliferating numbers of identity groups. And yet Trump increased his percentage of the vote in every single one of them. And that includes blacks, Hispanics, young people. He even got 2% more women votes than he did in 2020. So it was an across the board increase for him. And I think Kamala was a lousy candidate, completely inarticulate, and wouldn't say what she'd do different from Joe Biden, and the voters didn't like that, and so we were handed a big victory quickly.
There were all different quotes that kind of explain what's happened and help us understand. One of the quotes I saw the next day was that the Democrats didn't realize that women bought eggs and milk more than they bought an abortion. And it was the economy, and they focused on abortion as, and Trump got it right, that it was the economy, and the Democrats obviously couldn't run on the economy because it's so dire. So they had to find something else, which wasn't really an election winning strategy.
Well, the abortion thing is that was a slender reed on which to base an election campaign on. And I don't know if you saw the Joe Scarborough moment where he was talking with somebody railing about things weren't that bad. I mean, butter, and he held it up. Butter's like $3, last time I looked. And his wife, what's her name? Mika Brzezinski, looked at him and off camera said, well, no, Joe, it's actually $7. And that epitomized how out of touch the Democrat elite has been with what's going on in ordinary people's lives. I mean, I don't think Joe's had to think about the price of butter for many, many years, but everybody else has. And I that's a great phrase. I'm going to borrow it and use it, that people care more about that than an abortion.
There were so many, and I want to get into the finance side, but I saw today, Friday, that Gavin Newsom has announced some kind of gathering meeting to Trump-proof California. And you realize these people don't get it. And he, of course, put signs up on abortions and California being an utterly collapsed economy. And he put signs, don't worry, you can get an abortion. It's irrelevant that actually you can't make ends meet. But you kind of see that divide, and someone like Gavin Newsom, who's obviously putting himself forward to maybe be the nominee in 4 years, and you think you still don't get it, and it is shocking. I assume he's a smart person. Maybe he's not. I assume he is,
He's a shrewd
and yet
he's
doesn't
a shrewd
understand.
person.
Yeah,
He's the best liar they've had since Bill Clinton.
but tell me on that attitude and not wanting to face reality, and I guess an utter refusal to try and fix the country. Maybe someone like Gavin Newsom isn't even aware, just like the price of butter, isn't aware of the issues facing ordinary people.
Well, I think they're demonstrating why they lost big. I mean, of course, they didn't lose big in California because they've sort of overwhelmed that state with control of all the government apparatus. But the left has grown increasingly out of touch. It's a party of wealthy elites and people who are what is it, making under 40,000 a year, something like that, and it's not a working majority in any country, and they're. I just think they haven't woken up to this new reality that they've really lost most of their underlying constituencies. And but let's realize though that the next 3 months before Donald Trump is inaugurated, there's going to be a lot of rearguard actions here. I mean, that's probably the first. There'll be other attempts at lawfare. There'll be still talks of impeachment. There'll be all sorts of things. They're going to be fighting back, and they're going to try to relitigate or re-engineer the election, which isn't going to happen. And but what's really wonderful is that Trump is hunkered down with a tremendous team of people in Florida working out plans. They've been through this, and he knows what he's up against, and they've got very clear ideas about what kind of change they need to bring about and who the people are to do that. And, it's highly encouraging.
Well, that's one of the encouraging, not only the result, but actually the preparedness, because 2016 was a surprise. 2020, something went wrong. 2024, it seems as though there had been so much work. It's more professional maybe than ever before. That's what I hear from looking from the outside in. And it seems as though they are really ready to hit the ground running in terms of, well, taking control of the RNC, getting the vote, but actually having the teams in place, the people on the ground ready to fill positions. And it does seem as they're ready to start on day one, as opposed to me being a little bit surprised with the result.
Well, yeah, they've already announced. I think he had a 3-minute video on put out yesterday, which talked about the 10 things he was going to do to begin to roll back the most egregious parts of the deep state. The list could include 50 things or 100 things, but he hit the highlights, and he knows what he has to get done. And they're just simple things like the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda that's been permeating every single agency in the government, particularly the military. And I know one of the things they're going to do is day one is roll back a lot of the wokeness that infused the military and bring back real soldiers to fight wars. Of course, the good thing about Trump is he does not want us to fight wars. He wants a strong military, but we hope we don't have to use it.
I want to get your thoughts on the finance side. You mentioned DEI, and DEI seems to have replaced productivity and a desire for an economy to grow. It's not whether someone can do the job, it's actually what boxes they tick in that DEI scale. But you obviously have someone who huge experience in the financial industry. You were involved in the heading up the transition team on the economic side. What are your thoughts on the finance? Because there are a lot of things in Trump's inbox, but the economy and the border, but the economy has to be a priority so that Americans can actually afford to survive, which at the moment is on a knife edge. Where does he start in the many things in beginning to fix the economic mess that currently is there?
Well, the heart of the matter is energy policy. The heart of the matter is encouraging oil and gas, encouraging fracking, encouraging all the clean sources of energy. And in fact, there are those of us who believe that even the CO2 issue is a bogus issue. And so the idea we're supposed to demonize fossil fuels was wrongheaded to begin with and continues. There's a strong correlation between economic growth and low energy prices. It's almost 1-to-1. And also there's a strong correlation between growth itself and you look at the developing countries, and the Biden administration has been out there with all their policies in the State Department encouraging them to engage in wind and solar, and they're saying, well, thank you, that may have worked for us in the 17th century, but we'd like to enter the modern economy, and we need fossil fuels and oil and gas in order to do that. That's very true here at home. And so the other thing about the Biden agenda from day one, that was never about economic growth. It was always about the climate, about the woke agenda, the DEI, and really punishing businesses, and you just sort of stop punishing businesses, and what I think was Keynes used to call the animal spirits, they start coming back. The entrepreneurial climate improves. People start building businesses because they're less fearful of punitive regulation. And so there are 5 or 6 things that would they're going to cause the economy to grow. And of course, keeping taxes low instead of letting the increases kick in as they would have had Trump not come in will be a very good thing. Lower taxes equals economic growth.
When Trump says drill, baby, drill, and how does that work on a state-by-state level? Is it the case that California actually, well, you won't have any electricity, but the rest of the country will? Is that a state-by-state issue, or is it the central government, federal government, saying we're actually going to go ahead and drill? How does it work in terms of that moving forward for the country?
Well, that's really outside my area of expertise, but generally there are federal policies about leasing federal lands for drilling oil and gas, that sort of thing, and that's clearly federal control. Some of it's state, but an awful lot of it's federal. And what happens is that if you get get energy produced by energy producing states, that sort of beggars thy neighbor with regard to a state like California. California is trying to end refining gasoline in the state, which is only going to drive up prices. And I think Gavin Newsom may find himself staring at a very ugly political situation when a lot of other states are thriving and have cheaper electricity and gasoline, while Californians are paying the highest price at the pump. He can only push that so far, and he's going to lose whatever political base he's got.
And another area I'm really curious about is the debt pile. Now, maybe ask about California, maybe a state, and then wider, because if someone like Gavin Newsom keeps destroying the Californian economy and increasing the debt, I guess there will become a point where the federal government says, well, we're not going to continue covering you. I don't know how that works, but you can't have, it's like a naughty child just racking up a credit card, and the parent has to step in at some point. How does that work? California obviously is the worst example, but how does that work?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, come on. I mean, we just got back control of the government 4 days ago. Nobody knows how this is going to work. It's going to be messy. There are going to be lots of opposition. The green lobby has not gone away. People are making a fortune out of the Green New Deal. And my anecdote, I may have shared it with you before. When I got to Washington area in 1996, I was in the Army there in the early 1970s, and I discovered that Potomac, Maryland had become like this land of these amazing mansions. And I said, where'd this all come from? And they said, well, the lobbying money is really good here, and you can buy pretty big houses with the lobbying money. Well, what's happened under Biden is that some of those enormous mansions, which I thought were outlandish then, well, they're teardowns now, and they've been building newer, bigger ones with the Inflation Reduction Act money. And so there's going to be an enormous pushback among the people who've been beneficiaries of all this largesse. I mean, the deep state, basically all the people that have been employed in agencies. Trump is promising to move a lot of the federal government out of DC and into other parts of America, which are not. Remember, Washington D.C. Voted 94% for Kamala Harris, and that was only slightly worse than Hillary did, who got 96% of the vote. So this place is swampland, and it's heavily Democrat, and so there's going to be a lot of pushback on that. So we don't know how in detail it's going to roll back, but I think Trump has also learned, and we saw it with the elections, how to lawyer up themselves, and we're going to see the federal government and each of these agencies doing a lot to make things happen that we want to see happen on the regulatory front and otherwise. And I think we're perfectly prepared to litigate with California to bring about the economic growth agenda and really the freedoms that Trump is promising.
I don't think Trump is ready for that. And I want to pick up some of that on the changes with the institutions and how far Trump goes. But just on the issue of debt, I mean, does America begin to do a partial default? Because it's $1 trillion every 100 days.
Well, we've got enormous problems. We got 34, we've lost count now, maybe $35 trillion. And it's, the federal government spends about $2 trillion a year, and yet, or taxes bring in about $2 trillion a year. And that's still, $1 trillion short of what they've engineered as spending. But you know what, you roll back spending, and I think the number I saw the other day was 2020, which is 4 years ago, and that takes $1 trillion out of that. Now, there's something I saw on the internet where I think Elon Musk posted a photo of himself with Ron Paul. I believe it was Ron next to him, and they were kind of greedily looking at something that looked like the federal government saying, well, there's an opportunity here and there's an opportunity there. And we've got 260 agencies, probably 100 of those agencies we don't need. You begin to pare those things down. It's not just a matter of a little trim here, a little trim there. I think what they have in mind is a much more aggressive approach to eliminating agencies. Trump took the Twitter headcount down by 80%. And it's doing pretty well. And the just bigger picture, the way you look at it as a Silicon Valley executive, some of the big companies like Amazon and Apple and the other ones have seen their revenues grow nicely in the last 3 or 4 years, and yet their headcount has dropped. And the reason is that there's so many productivity improvements available from technology and artificial intelligence, just the latest version. The federal government's not done any of that. And so there's a tremendous opportunity to shrink the spending if you're willing to make the hard decisions about the number of people you actually have to employ to have a government that does a job for people.
I mean, I've seen a lot of criticism on Musk, people saying, he's bought himself into that position. He was one of the biggest donors to the to the Trump campaign. But he also brings a lot of business expertise that seems to be lacking. And if he brings that same ideas that he has with Twitter, that you need to lean up the company, so actually you're not spending more than you're making. That's how economies work. That's how businesses work. If he takes that to the government, there'd be huge changes. So he does seem to be one of the key people in actually making the next 4 years successful.
That's right. He is. And I everybody talks about his motivations. Are they to help him, increase his empire? Well, every human being on the planet has multiple motivations to do things. And I do believe that Elon Musk has a sincere motive, truly believes in, in free speech, truly believes that government ought to be working to cause people to flourish and not to make people miserable, which is where we've been under Democrat control. So I think he's a true believer. Does he benefit in some areas personally? Possibly, but I don't believe that's what he's counting on. When he bought Twitter for 40 billion plus, it was he overpaid by 20-30 billion dollars, and it wasn't at all clear that was going to work. And then he radically pushed it towards a more balanced approach to speech, and that turned out to be the right business strategy as well. And so I think for economic growth, for freedom of speech, for all the things that we cherish as Americans, I think that's also good for business. So it's a win-win if we get his talent really engaged, and I think that's going to happen.
And also, he can fix problems that other huge companies can't. Look at Boeing and actually coming up with SpaceX and actually putting people into space and bringing them back whenever Boeing, which is such an American institution, was unable to. And if this guy who's arrived from South Africa, self-made, is where he is, if he can come up against a huge institution like Boeing, then, I mean, go for it. It's going to be exciting to see the ideas he comes up with, thinking outside the box.
Well, one of the things about, I mean, that's an amazing contrast between, people wonder about DEI, and we're all in favor of all sorts of people having opportunities to get ahead. But when you put something like that as your first priority, which is what Boeing has done, and you stop hiring on merit and you stop promoting on merit, which is what Boeing has been doing for the last decade, all of a sudden you end up with a more mediocre talent pool. And if you compare that to Elon Musk, because he's surrounded by people who are almost as smart as he is, and almost as just not only know the engineering but know how to make things happen. They're operators, not just engineers. And so I'm sure we're thinking about putting people in the government who might be able to have that kind of talent. I'm sure one of the things we're thinking about is how do we attract more talented people, fewer more talented people to bring about the programs that we still need. I mean, we're not talking about getting rid of government. We're just talking about figuring out what it really needs to do and do that better.
Well, getting rid of government may work, but no, that may be a bit extreme.
Well, when I was younger, I thought that was a very good idea, but I see there's some downsides to that.
I'm still holding on to that as an idea. But Trump has brought in big beasts into it in a way that you don't normally get in politics. It's more kind of career progression, individuals working their way, bureaucrats in effect, and him bringing in Elon Musk, bringing in Bobby Kennedy. You've got other people who've come from the left over, like Tulsi Gabbard, but those individuals, Kennedy and Musk, that is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. How is that going to work? Because I can imagine the deep state will be hunkering down and ready for this huge battle against the deconstructing a lot of what they have put together.
Absolutely. I mean, this will be epic. This will be tremendous spectator sport. Yeah, and their egos. I mean, the people Trump has brought in to fix these agencies or maybe eliminate agencies, there's going to be a tremendous pushback against that. And then let's not forget that, Lon's got an ego, Bobby Kennedy's got an ego. I mean, everybody on this team are high achievers, and so we'll see. There'll be some conflict among advisors and agency heads and things like that as we go forward. But it's far better to have that than the alternative, which was a government which is driving us into bankruptcy and ending our freedoms.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I do hope he'll take, and I get to the question, we've got to do something about the surveillance state, and we've got to do something about the intelligence services, and we've got to do something about the FBI, and that's the scariest part. I mean, what did Chuck Schumer warn somebody when they came into town? He said, "Don't mess with the FBI." because they've got 9 ways to Sunday to hurt you. And so this is another aspect of it. Trump is promising to reveal what the FBI and the other intelligence services have been up to for the last 50 years, and going all the way back to the Kennedy assassination. And there's going to be there's a commitment to open that up to so people can see what they've been up to and over this time, and it's going to be ugly, and that's going to play out. As I said, it's spectator sport or whatever. It's going to be. We're hopeful to see massive changes and get an intelligence service that works for America instead of against America.
One of the tweets I saw today was Elon Musk accepting the post of press secretary, which was obviously a little bit of a spoof. But I could imagine something that Trump is willing to do what he has to do, and he realizes the size of the task. He's an outsider. He won't just do what has been done. He's going to put his own people in place, not rely on the party machine to put that, all of that. And kind of, you look at it and you think, all the commentary that you watch, you think, well, probably all bets are off, because the story has not been written of an administration like this. Not only the type of person Trump is, but actually coming back for a second time and stepping into that, I think was over 100 years ago. You may know better the different presidencies, but this is a completely different game. How do you see that? Because the people going in will not be the institutional figures. There'll be people who understand the sectors they're in, as opposed to just being handed a brief, which is fairly unique for government.
Well, sorry, I just got interrupted. We're in uncharted seas now. We don't know. I mean, the typical conventional wisdom is you go in to and this is true in business, you go in, you want to accomplish 2 or 3 big things, and you do that, and you declare victory, and you've had a successful administration or successful tenure as a business executive. Well, that's not what's going to be happening here. I believe they're going to be fighting for change across multiple fronts. I mentioned the intelligence services. We've got a Food and Drug Administration, which is, Americans have gotten 40, 50, 60 pounds heavier in the last 50 years under the guidance of the dietary guidance of the Food and Drug Administration. We've got a pharmaceutical company, which is aimed at sickness rather than making people healthy. We've got a tax code, which punishes all sorts of good behavior and rewards bad behavior. For example, interest rate deductions and things like that. You can see, and I was going to try to pull together maybe a list of 100 things that could be changed in a Trump administration. If he goes at all that, it'll be a mixed bag. But my guess is he'll win on 6 or 7 out of 10 fronts, and that'll be a massive and positive change. But I think that's the kind of ambition they've got. They're not thinking small.
They're not, and part of that is Bobby Kennedy. I think Bobby was at one of the Tucker rallies, and I saw the clip. He said that since 1995, he has prayed for 30 minutes every single day, and he's prayed for an opportunity to fix the chronic health problems and the health industry in America. I said, and God give me President Trump. The crowd was roaring.
Well, and think about Donald Trump. Think about his exercise regime and his diet. I mean, he's been living on
Coke and cheeseburgers.
And I love it. I love his diet. He's living on burgers and golf is his exercise regime. So he's not exactly who you'd think of as somebody that would be empowering Bobby Kennedy. But that's exactly what he's doing, because he knows it's the right thing to do.
Where does that? Because it's interesting. Those big. I mean, Trump will get criticism. Nigel Farage actually sometimes gets his criticism for being maybe thin-skinned, wanting to be the alpha male. But it
Well,
does seem as though there is a meeting of minds, and they seem to, certainly the conversations that have come out between Trump, Musk, and Kennedy, they seem to, well, this is what we want to focus on. We'll happily disagree on that. And there doesn't have to be an agreement in everything. That attitude seems to be put them in a very good position to actually do what they need to do.
the good, the good thing about how bad Biden and Kamala Harris were is there's so many opportunities to make things better.
That's true.
And, it's a target rich environment. And so I think it's a little easier to put egos aside because there's so much low hanging fruit that can be gathered. And I think that's going to be the approach. But as I said, there'll be some headlines about bruised egos, turf wars, this, that, and the other. It's not going to be a seamless change, but radical and good change is never kind of picture perfect.
No, they're huge. One other area in the economy is jobs and bringing business back. And Trump has talked about tariffs, doing what's best for America, and that's what he did under his administration. It seemed to be that Biden or Obama or Harris seemed to want to give those jobs away to any country but America. How does that work in returning those jobs back to the country and getting back to made in America as opposed to made in China?
Well, the thing I know the people around Donald Trump, and I know he believes this. He's not against immigration. And we do need immigration in America of talented people to help us build the country and want to be part of the American experiment. But that's not what we've had. We've had an open border, and we brought in people that are, we've emptied prisons, as they claim in Argentina. I mean, there's going to be, he's serious about the deportation that will need to happen, and that will create. But see, I don't see a lot of the most recent people coming in as having filled that many jobs anyway, and the opportunity for jobs comes from building businesses, building industries, and economic growth. And I think when we get the growth thing going again, the jobs will be plentiful. And I think we can have both a reasonable immigration system and plenty of jobs for people who have been born in America.
How would that work in terms of relationships with certainly with China is the big one? How that will develop, not only with Taiwan, but just that economic benefit together. That economic benefit seems to have gone more one way towards China. I think Trump will want to reassess that and remedy that. How do those conversations go between the number one and number two superpower that have the largest slice of the world economy?
Well, I think if, what does he say? Tariff is the most beautiful word in the English language. I'm not sure I agree with that, but then, he's got the job and he's got the agenda. I think what he's going to say to the Chinese is, you're going to have to, if you want to manufacture, maybe the Chinese could even start manufacturing here. But I think there's going to be tariffs and some bringing back of things that have been manufactured in China, which should be manufactured here. And this is not just a question of economics. It's a question of national security. I mean, we found during the COVID epidemic that there was enormous number of our drugs which are manufactured and packaged offshore, China, India, whatever places. And our drug supply chain is extremely vulnerable to economic or to God forbid, some sort of war happens, we could be left without the essential drugs. So there's that. There's also the technology piece that China's been stealing. Now, my hope is that Bob Lighthizer comes back and plays a big role in the administration because he knows how to work with a scalpel and not just an axe. And so I think we could have some constructive engagement with Chinese. It need not be all bad for them. I think we can work. I think actually we're less likely to have real conflict with them in the job than we would have with the continuation of Democrat policies.
Yeah. Let me touch on kind of how the US works with Europe, because under the last regime, Europe had been certainly fairly left, as in left leaning politically. And there seemed to be a meeting of the eyes on a lot of the issues. That seems to have changed across Europe. Only today or yesterday, the German government collapsed, and the Alternative for Deutschland are doing exceptionally well, and they'll be pushing for that. Populist parties in Austria, Gerd Wilders was putting out messages today, running the country in Netherlands, and of course Maloney over there in Italy. There's it seems as though this change in America has happened at an interesting time to the change in Europe. And I think that means that instead of a divide, that our media in the UK and Europe sometimes make it out that this monster Trump is here. Actually, I think he will connect with a lot of the changes politically. So, I mean, how do you see that with America's kind of outward focusing our relationships? Because I think it could be extremely positive going forward.
Oh, I completely agree. I think this sends a signal that America gets it, and that Trump wins the popular vote in addition to electoral college, and he wins across every single constituency, increased his numbers from 2020. That sends a very powerful message to the populist movements in Europe. And Germany, I hadn't heard that the government had collapsed, but Angela Merkel put Germany on a path to ruin. I mean, she got rid of nuclear power. She thought everything was going to be wind and solar. She did this, and they've gone from an economic superpower to something what is their economy shrinking 1-2% every year now in the last couple of years. I mean, that's not, and that can all be fixed. That's all self-inflicted. And I would think this would send a very strong people to voters in all of European countries that what America's done, you can do too. And now, what I don't know is whether the leaders in those countries are up to pulling it together the way I believe Trump is. But I think he'll show the way.
It was obviously Viktor Orban, good friend of President Trump. I saw today the Czech Prime Minister put on a MAGA hat whenever he did a press conference. It's that kind of things could actually be very good here to a relationship. Of course, Britain is the one left behind, and I don't know whether Nigel Farage will ever get that position of being ambassador to the US for the UK. Who knows? So the UK left behind, but everywhere else is really a bright spark. And I think there could be a lot of benefits in terms of trade, in terms of relationship, in terms of looking at the threat, in terms of security. I think there are great conversations to be had where I think up to now it's been fairly fractured.
Well, but let's step back and what are we really trying to accomplish? What we're trying to accomplish is human flourishing. We're trying to accomplish making people's lives better, and where we've gone with the elite Davos, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, UN mandates, and trying to control this, that, and the other thing has been absolutely making people miserable and impoverishing people in some cases. And so what's happening with Trump is he wants to open the economy back up to growth, and that'll open up opportunity. And he wants to open up the marketplace of ideas back to free speech by shutting down the censorship regime we've had. And I think that's an infectious, in a positive way, I think that's an infectious movement that could, I think it can only benefit Europe.
Or complete with that protection of free speech that has been on the edge.
Without that, you don't have anything.
Yeah, no, completely. That is, to me, that is what this election has been about. The right to speak freely and spread ideas and have that grown-up debate over these big issues. That's what's been on the ballot slip for people voting for. Obviously, he's got a couple of months until he has put in. He's already announcing cabinet positions, putting people in place, getting on with that. I mean, for you as an American, how does that conversation work whenever you don't actually know who's president at the moment? Because I saw Biden come out doing a press conference, and I was like, oh dear. It's a really confusing situation. I mean, none of us really know.
Yeah, it's worse than that. It's a dangerous situation. It's dangerous. I mean, it's we try not to stare at it too hard, but the fact is, Joe should have left office, taken himself out a year ago. And if Joe had done the right thing, he probably would have said to the Democrats, "I've had a great first term. You can put me on Mount Rushmore." But I think it's good for just one term, and let's have an open primary and get another candidate in here to take up where I've come from and do more of it. Now, I think that would have been a catastrophe, but it would have been better politics for the Democrats, and I think a better legacy for Joe Biden. We're at risk. We're at risk. We've got 3 months right now. There's going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of pushback. Bad guys around the world may see this as their last opportunity to get away with something. I think Iran, with Trump as president, has a big problem. Whether China, and I don't think this will happen. I mean, people talk about China wanting Taiwan. I don't think that's a practical attainment for them, and I think they think that carries more risk than benefits. But Israel, what's happening there? I mean, whether people feel this is the last opportunity to do something there with Trump in office. I mean, we're really, and then we've got a dirty bomb that presumably Zelensky is making in Ukraine. How the power works, where you've got a president-elect and you've got a lame duck president who is also has dementia. It's a scary time right now, and so I think we all need to be grown-ups and clear-eyed about those risks, and be smart about not letting America do something dumb while Biden is still president.
But I think, just to finish off with, I think that actually when Trump says he'll bring peace in 24 hours in terms of Russia, Ukraine, obviously there'll be back channel conversations, and I can see movement happening just like when Reagan came in and the hostages were released. I can see kind of conversations happening, and Russia and Ukraine, Israel and what's happening there being told, right, well, let's sit down and have a conversation. You need to have this sorted. This is what's on the table. If you don't agree to it, then it'll be quite punitive against you, certainly towards Ukraine. But I could see both of those actually within 24 hours actually being sorted out, and Trump being able to keep to his word on that.
Well, this is not my area of expertise, but didn't Flynn get into trouble because he was talking with the Russians before Trump was inaugurated, and that became a political hot button, and they used it to get rid of him? I mean, there's some guidelines here about what you can say before you're in office and what you can't. I'm not exactly sure about the details, but they're going to have to work inside those guardrails very carefully, because you still got a wildly hostile press with the New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, et cetera. And so any chance they have to demonize what Trump would do before he's inaugurated, they will take that opportunity and do it.
You mean Trump may stay within guidelines? Surely not.
Well,
we will see.
I don't know. Anybody who gets elected with a mugshot as one of his posters,
it's true. Our
very unusual
felon. It's true. Bill, I really appreciate you coming on, giving us your thoughts, your wealth of expertise in the finance sector. Of course, the transition teams understand the political. It's fascinating to have your insights and thoughts. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Peter, great as always, and we'll do a home and away again, I hope.
Sounds good. Of course, the Bill Walton Show is there on your screen. Make sure and go and have the awesome privilege of joining Bill the other week on his show. Fantastic guest, great content, good topics, and make sure and follow him there. So, Bill, thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, thanks, Peter.